and welcome to our webinar today, The Frictionless Revolution or Evolution. I'm your host, Donna Perkins, Standards Manager of Conexxus, and your moderator today is Kristen Call with Intel. Here's our agenda for the day. We'll walk through some housekeeping, talk a little bit about Conexxus, and then introduce our presenters and go right into our presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on Conexxus365.org probably within the next week. You can ask questions via our webinar interface. Please don't ask any vendor-specific questions. Our webinars may be used toward PCI continuing education credits for qualifying live events. And you can just contact 365 at Conexxus.org or any Conexxus staff member to find out about that. And if you're interested in speaking or sponsoring a Conexxus 365 event, you can also contact us there. This is the slide our lawyers make us put in. Conexxus does not endorse any products or services that may be described or mentioned in this presentation, and the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the speakers and not of Conexxus. By hosting this webinar, Conexxus is not providing legal advice, and if you have any questions about a legal issue, please ask your attorney. Thank you to our 2021 Diamond sponsors. All of these companies have made it possible for Conexxus to continue working and to make great progress over the past 19 months, and we're very grateful for all your support. Conexxus is an independent nonprofit technology organization that sets standards in the convenience and fuel retail industry. We provide vision and education on emerging technology trends. We advocate for our industry and assist and sit at the table where policies are being made so that your industry is represented and decisions aren't made that hurt your business. We will be at the NAC show in person at booth 3770. Please come see us and attend the technology track education sessions that Conexxus has assisted in. We look forward to seeing you there. And of course, you can find us in a couple of different places. You can find us at Conexxus.org, Conexxus365.org. We're also on LinkedIn, and we're always happy to hear from you. All right, now I'll hand it over to Kristen Call with Intel, our sponsor and moderator.
Thank you, Donna. I'm excited to be moderating this session. I'm Kristen Call. I am America's IoT specialist at Intel. And I am joined with some fabulous casts here. We have Bill Miller, who's VP of Sales. He leads GK's Retail Store Solutions business development in the Americas. And he has over 30 years experience in consulting, sales, and management roles with leading store and enterprise technology companies. And one of his personal passions is supporting nonprofit JDRF's mission to find a cure to improve the lives of type 1 diabetes. I'm excited that he let me share that little tidbit about him. And Toby Awalt is the Director of Product Marketing at Mashgin, the world's, well, I love it how he claims it's the world's fastest self-checkout. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. and it's powered by artificial intelligence. And prior to Mashgin, Toby scaled other AI-based companies in marketing and recruiting software and worked as a marketing strategy consultant for organizations ranging from Fortune 500 companies to new startups. And last but not least, we have Ivy Dixon, who is the VP of Digital Experience. And he's got more than 20 years of experience in the Pro AV and digital signage, commercial hardware, software, and installation, integration, and solution delivery. Ivy has a deep understanding of the intricacies of digital engagement. And prior to joining SageNet, Ivy served in senior solutions and sales engineering roles at Scala and NanoNation, as well as operating digital signage consultancy. And with that, we are going to have a fun and engaging conversation about frictionless revolution or evolution. And I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Christian. And thank you for the Conexxus organization for putting this on. It's an incredibly timely and relevant event. And especially with NACS coming up, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of these technologies there for all of us and the retailers to take a look at. So I'll give you the perspectives of GK in this this topic. So what is frictionless? Well, the first thing is we got to remember what it's all about. It's about the customer. It's about me shopping my way. It's got to be fast and easy. And we're convenience stores, so it better be convenient. So we can't ever forget that and focus on the customer and not the technology. So go ahead to the next slide, Kristen. So from the GK perspective, is it evolution or revolution? Well, first, we think it's both, but we think immediately it's more about evolution. So, if you look at this continuum here from left to right, we have traditional point of sale. Many retailers have self-checkout, kiosks for QSR ordering. Of course, your forecourt, if you have gas in your stores, maybe you have mobile POS. Many retailers have apps. Some are starting to dabble in scan and go technology. And then, it's getting into the more modern things like scanless and touchless. And then all the way to like walk-in, walk-out type stores. So at GK, we want to be able to play in all these areas, and we do today. And our approach is we have a common services bus with common APIs. And all these touch points, whether they're a GK touch point or whether they're a partner or third party that wants to consume our services, they all consume the information the same way. So they go one place to get things like items, prices, promotions, customer loyalty, etc. So one version of the truth for the customer when they check out, no matter where they're checking out. So we think that's very important. And, we think that it's going to be a mix for many retailers. Not too many retailers are going to close their stores and overnight open up Amazon Go type stores. We think that retailers are going to experiment with a lot of these different types of ways of serving their customers based on what they think fits their customers the best. And it may be a mix of these things. And, I'll provide a couple of examples. So we're doing a project right now with a retailer's convenience store retailer. They're using our point of sale. They're using us to control their forecourt, all their payments. And we're partnering with the next speaker on this panel, Toby, with Mastin. So they're consuming our services. And so our POS are sitting next to a Mastin touchless, scanless self-service terminal, all consuming the same data to provide the transactions for the customers. And if you go to the far right, full walk-in, walk-out, at GK, we're experimenting with a number of different technologies. So there's camera-based technology, there's shelf-based technology, AI, there's LiDAR. We're prototyping a number of these things, and we'll be making some announcements soon on some projects we're going to be doing there. But we're doing it all the same way, and we believe there are going to be retailers that want to offer kind of an all of the above type of options for their customers. And just this week, there was an announcement about Whole Foods and what Amazon is doing with their technology in the store. So at Whole Foods test store, they're using the Amazon Go walk-in, walk-out technology, but they also have self-checkout in the store. So for customers that don't want to use walk-in, walk-out, they can use self-checkout. And Amazon also has their fresh stores that they've been opening in Southern California. And they're not using the Amazon Go, but they have a smart cart. So as you put items in and out of your basket as you go around the store, it's ringing up those items. And then they also have a full POS and self-checkout at the main checkout. So we even think Amazon, who tends to be seen as the leader in this space, they are seeing that in traditional stores, you really have to offer these customers these different ways to shop. So it really validates what our strategy is at GK and what we're doing to offer to our customers, depending on their customers and what they want. So that's it. Kristen, back to you.
Great, thanks.
Ready for me?
Toby, let's go.
All right. Well, Bill did a really good job of describing what's been happening. And I want to give a little more context into who it's been happening to, what industries have been adopting touchless and frictionless options the fastest, and why they're doing it, the outcomes that they get. But I want to start with some context on the problem itself, a little more data behind it. So all the way back in 2018, Forrester actually did a study with retail shoppers on their biggest pain points in retail. And what they settled on was that shoppers hate lines. Surprise. In fact, 32% of shoppers will change locations due to lines. But there is some good news on my next slide that 65% of shoppers will use self-checkout to avoid lines. They said that, hey, they would be willing to adopt a new technology or a self-service option if it means they get to their goods faster. It's important to look at the timing of the study because this is pre-pandemic. So both of these effects have been amplified since then. More people are hesitant and afraid of lines than ever before, and more people are familiar with and willing to use alternative technologies, be it frictionless, touchless, or mobile, right, to avoid those lines in situations. As for organizations and industries that are picking these up today, next slide, we can take a look at who's using it right now. So we've seen big frictionless adoption in places like corporate dining. That includes the cafeteria at, say, like Google, as well as spots inside of hospitals. A big push in sports stadiums recently, where a lot of new frictionless technologies are taking root as people try to bring fans back in the stadium safely. Airports and other travel centers, and of course, convenience stores who are overrun right now in terms of customers versus the labor shortage, and trying to reduce those lines and offer that awesome opportunity of service. And I've got some pictures of what touchless setups look like each of these environments that we can go through real quick, just one by one. So this is a corporate dining setting where 3,000 to 5,000 people might eat lunch every day using about 12 terminals that all run really, really quickly to reduce lines. Here we have a spot inside of the Denver Broncos Stadium where customers off to the side of this camera will grab an item to go, be it chicken strips or popcorn, grab their beer, check out, and be on their way. Here's a hybrid model inside of an airport where customers coming up can either grab some quick service items or pre-made items and go, or you can see on the right, they may order something to be made for them right there. And finally, a more traditional convenience store context. This is on the counter next to a traditional point of sale to create an express lane for people who are ready to get in and out of the store quickly. Now, all of these contexts have an avenue to ROI, and there's multiple ways that you'll see it. The first is the most simple, right? Shorter lines yield more sales. The inverse of what the Forrester study showed holds to be true. So if before people came in, they saw a line and they decided not to purchase, now that they don't see a line or the lines are shorter, they're more likely to buy something. And we've seen this most poignantly in sports stadiums where you have that really strong alignment of people who want to get their concessions and get out. So when we installed high-speed self-checkout at the Denver Broncos, we saw throughput double and about 34% more concession sales per game as a result. If we go to just walk out technologies like Amazon Go, they published some data in Bloomberg around having about 50% more overall revenue than a typical convenience store. So they saw about 550 customers per day with an average cart of about $10. One thing to note there, of course, is that Amazon Go's are starting in mostly cityscapes, so that cart size may not hold as you get out into rural areas, but the velocity of customers probably will if you have stores that can handle that type of capacity. Another avenue to return is going to be staff savings, right, where people are already struggling right now with the labor shortage. And what we found in clients is that as they bring in a frictionless solution, right, those managers are able to budget fewer and fewer hours necessary to handle the transaction load per week. So we see stores save anywhere from 30 to 100 hours per week, depending on how long and how familiar they are with the technology in their region and how many machines they bring in or how full scale they're going with their frictionless option. When you have more efficient labor, you can also extend hours, right? So if you're not going 24/7 today, you can actually move and do more hours because you can spread shifts out further, which gives more opportunities for sales on the same sunk costs of real estate. This is really big in the corporate dining space where cafeterias may have had more specific hours that now they can extend or they can leave grab and go options. And finally, they're adopting these frictionless experiences because they're just better experiences. In our surveys of customers who use one of these technologies, 80% report that they prefer frictionless options to traditional forms of checkout and self-checkout. The last thing I want to talk about is how whenever you do a digital form of checkout or a self-service form of checkout, you're also given the opportunity to link it up with more innovations that you're bringing into the store. So whether that's heat mapping, looking at where people go in the store, or cart analysis, understanding what people have in their cart before or at the moment of checkout, looking at loyalty and buyer history. All of these can be combined when you're using some digitized, some connected form of checkout, full frictionless, self-checkout, or otherwise. And you can surface that via text message within an app or at the point of purchase screen, wherever someone's making that final commitment. So this gives a lot of opportunities to bring in that connected store and use it at really pivotal moments when you have a lot of intent and knowledge around a customer. And I think that sets us up pretty well for Ivy.
Absolutely. Ivy.
Absolutely. Wow. So much technology to take in, and actually a great transfer moment over to getting that live in your store. And one of the things that we kind of live by at SageNet is don't forget the dragons that are out there. If they're close to you, calculate them, right? J.R. Tolkien told us, don't let them live in your backyard if you're not going to take care of them. And that's where the ecosystem of technology really comes into play if we look at the next slide. If you think about what Bill presented and you think about what Toby presented, these are technologies that enable customers to have a seamless, or as we're talking about here, a frictionless environment. But part of that frictionless, and Bill said it on his very, very first slide, it's about me. When I'm the customer, it's about me. I want to walk in the store. I want to have my transaction. I want to walk out. And that transaction is the only thing I might really be focused on. But the reality of that transaction is that all of the technologies that Bill talked about and the specific technologies that Toby talked about in that transaction of pulling a drink out of a cooler and then walking by and getting out, going to my lunch, if I'm in a corporate environment, have an infrastructure around them. And that infrastructure creates an ecosystem where on the left-hand side, those technologies enter what we affectionately refer to as the meat grinder. But those technologies, they come out of the box. They need to be managed. They need to have a life of their own. And it really takes three levels. It takes an organization of people around that technology to set a base level. It takes professional services, design, build, test, install, to really make that something great on day one. But the reality is the power of that technology is day 1,000. It's when I walk in 2 years later to a place like the Broncos Stadium, and I know that if I grab that beer out of the fridge and I grab a burger and I walk over and I scan it and I walk away, it's going to work the same way it did as when it was installed. And so the actions that we take way before the installation are key to day 1,000. But day 1,000 is the last key piece of the ecosystem, which is managed services. Maintaining and monitoring that environment is key to its life. You could throw technology onto a shelf and it would be really cool on day one. But to make sure it's cool on day 500 or day 1,000 means it's got to be maintained and monitored and supported, and there's got to be optimization and analytics. And that's incredibly key to the ecosystem process. And when you start to look at these organizations, and if we look at the next slide, they're diverse in their processes. And I've got two of these. The first one, if you look at C-store and pharmacy, the transformation of these locations has been vast over the last 5 to 10 years, but that's been concentrated in a couple of years. And as we all know, during the pandemic last year, the ramp up into these transformation technologies was extreme. But when you look at these technologies, whether it's smart shelves or integrated pumps or EV charging on the outside or indoor, a touchless purchase, but then you also go back of house and you go through menu boards, all of a sudden, all of these have to be integrated, monitored, and managed. And if we look actually at the next slide, the C-store and hospitality are starting to merge. They're much, much closer than they were before. And what we're seeing now is the technologies match. So what you see in the technologies of the previous slide and you look at in the technologies of this slide, they start to get closer and closer on the map, if not even directly overlap. Digital menu boards and kiosks for ordering, or back of house inventory management through RFID. But then also, how do we make that purchase more seamless and more frictionless for the user? And you start to look at like number 8, that order view and POS at the window. How does that become something that's not taking out my credit card, putting in my credit card, and then waiting for that transaction, but instead knowing that it's my order, I've already logged in through my mobile device, I pull up, they verify it's me, and off I go. That is, the focus there is on the end customer, and that transformation is key. So I'd like to look at 2 other lists really quickly in 2 areas that are very key, I think, to C-stores, but also to this QSR environment. So if we look at the next slide and we think about the forecourt, the forecourt has become so valuable. The forecourt used to be a place that you pulled in, you got gas, and you tried to draw someone from there into the store. What's now happened is, how do we make the forecourt valuable even if they don't make it inside the door? And that gives us an opportunity to talk about smart vending. It gives us an opportunity to talk about queue line vending. But it also gives us opportunities, which Toby talked about at length, is the idea of mobile management and mobile addition. So how do you get loyalty actualization, but also the reality of pay at the pump through a mobile device and that transaction that's valuable to the customer? There's lots of different ways. Computer vision is some of that, but also smart lockers play a role potentially in the future, and traditional digital signage. If we look at the other use cases, though, when they do make it into the store, and we look beyond the forecourt and we look at the next slide, what we see here is in store, the technology is getting smarter. And the great thing about this slide is that this is a revamp, but very similar to what you saw in some of the things that Toby showed, as well as some of the things that Bill showed. And what I love about that is that the technology is lining up, and 3 very diverse vendors across this presentation are still coming to the table with the same thought process, because it is the thought process that the end customer has. They want to be able to walk into a store and have smart digital signage that then helps them bring a transaction forward and makes the checkout process easier. All of those steps along the way live on the network. And when they live on the network, then they need to be monitored and managed, because when one of those breaks down, it's no longer frictionless. That's the beauty of the SageNet piece when you combine it with MassGen and GK. And having all of that live together is really, really key for C-stores as well as traditional QSRs and just retail in general. But here's the best part of that. If we look at the next slide, we get to move into the future. And the future pushes us into an area where the customer is even more connected. And it doesn't have to be with a mobile device. It can now be with AI voice. And one of those partners that we have, who's actually also an Intel partner, is SodaClick. And SodaClick is a really cool technology that allows people to walk in, do a voice ordering. If you've used a kiosk in the past to order, you know that it can be a lot of steps. There's a lot of those environments where there's a lot of options to decide. This voice ordering, we believe, is the future. And whether it affects a drive-through or whether it affects something maybe at the pump in the forecourt, or even when you walk in, I think there's endless environments. But it all wraps up back into one thing. And here's the greatest part of this. Everything that I believe Bill talked about, everything that Toby talked about, and everything that we talk about at SageNet and live by in terms of monitoring and management gives you, the client, our client, but for the benefit of your end customer, this ability to do something that's extremely important in the marketplace. If we look at the last slide, everybody thinks that the big eats the small. That's true in some cases. But in reality, what happens is that the fast eat the slow. All of the technologies, the ability to monitor and manage and maintenance these technologies, and the ability to make an ecosystem that then your customer lives inside of in a completely seamless and frictionless world, that allows you to be fast and eat those folks who are slow in the marketplace. And it allows those customers to want to come back to you because they feel that savings and it's all about them. With that, I think we're going to answer some questions. I'll turn it back over to Kristen and we'll go from there.
Well, I guess if you guys don't have any questions, you haven't been listening. So I'm excited for the Q&A. So let's get started. I would love to start off with perhaps some real world examples. We have a hot topic in here that I love. I love convenience store retailers because they always are real and never leave anything on the table. So I'm going to first address this to Toby. So, you know, in the real world, you've got your solutions out there. There's going to be lines. Now, how would you answer that question for our audience? How do you get that return on investment, even though there's going to be a line perhaps at your station?
So you mean that, like, even though there's going to be a line at the mesh and you, or like any self-checkout option, so like what you're going for and where these stats come from is the net effect, right? So yes, if you have 40 people walk into a convenience store, almost no matter what format your counter is going to have a line on it. But the question is, how fast can you work through that line? What is your real throughput for those customers? So that A, the people in line don't feel like they're waiting forever, and B, you get to a point where people are more likely to buy things and enter the store as a result because they see that the line is either non-existent or moving fast. So, you know, there's fast and slow periods in any day, in any service business, and any retail business. And the goal for technologies like mine is to help you chew through those lines really quickly and make sure that you have the velocity that makes people return to the store. So there's a couple parts. One is, you know, if it's my first time experiencing it, I walk in the store, see, oh, there's a big line, and then I notice that there's an option, right? I can get express lane, or the line is moving quickly. So that can encourage additional purchase, and then it also makes people remember that your store, those lines move fast. Right, that's an experience change. It's a different idea than the grocery store. So those people are more likely to return and do those extra retail buys in the future when they need something, even if they see a slightly longer line. So of course, lines are going to be a part of these systems. And even in Just Walk Out, they're a part of the system because those technologies have limits on how many people can be in a store at one time. So like they're, you know, we're never going to completely get rid of them, but the idea is how fast can we reduce them? Can we make lines be a negligible problem? Lower friction. And then can we make lines more or less not exist more of the time, right? The faster you chew through those moments when you have lines, the less total period of time that you ever have one. Does that make sense, Kristen? Did I cover that question?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I remember, if you think about the different ways to pay, remember the checks. You're waiting for someone to write that check, and you're waiting, you know, it's usually your grandma to finish writing that. And now we want to have our watch or whatever it is to be able to quickly check us out. Bill, do you have any comments on, you know, we started out, is this a frictionless revolution or evolution? You know, not everybody wants to go and put in an Amazon Go. People want to have a little bit of an experience for their customer. Can you comment on that?
Well, I think it's going to be more evolutionary because that's a way retailers buy. They just can't, close a store and overnight open it frictionless. So they're going to deploy more almost touch point technologies that they can try in a more agile or iterative fashion to see what works for their customers. And I think Mashton is a perfect example of that, of the way it can be introduced into an existing store to provide self-service to address immediate problems retailers have today around labor shortages and other things. So we think it's going to be more of an evolution transition. So the technology has to get developed. It's not going to be adopted overnight. I mean, it took a long time for people to adopt just plain old scanning in stores. I mean,
well, fun fact,
that was a 20-year process, okay, from the time it was invented. Now, it'll move faster this time around because everything is faster, but it's going to take time.
It took the C-store industry about 15 to 20 years to adopt pay at the pump.
Right.
Fun little fact. Ivy, any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fascinating topic of what's the value of no line versus line, right? I mean, there's that piece of it, but then there's the conversation of just frictionless in general, right? And I live and die by making sure, and SageNet lives and dies by making sure that technology is up and running. And I think sometimes, with self-checkout, part of the allure there is that there's more areas for me to go check out. There's more opportunity for me to get through the environment quicker or easier. But if the technology is not doing what it's supposed to, that creates a different experience, right? And so I think it's a combination of having the right technology and also having the infrastructure to support it. I think the other thing is this is specifically around a C-store environment. In that scenario, you're trying to move through people as quickly as possible. So the Amazon Go model is very attractive in this scenario, right? That's what I like about Toby's slide around the Broncos Stadium. That's a great example of where they're there to see the game. They're there to enjoy their time with family or friends or whatnot. They're not there to stand in line and wait for a concessionaire to upsell them on, additive pretzel bites, right? So I think that's actually a great place where it comes into play, where it allows the customer to focus on their objective versus focusing on what maybe the store's objective is, which is to sell more. But in the end, they're probably going to win with those customers because the customer is going to buy more if it's easier to buy.
Well, you brought up a really good point. Are you losing the upsell when you're doing a self-checkout versus a cashier who may be able to do that? Are we seeing some technologies around suggested models? Just like, you're on Amazon, you're going to buy something and it's saying, hey, people that bought this like this. Are you guys seeing anything like that? Because maybe retailers are wondering, am I going to compromise that bigger basket? And I think, Toby, you hit on a little bit of that when you were talking.
Yeah, so like that's something that I think we are working on, and anybody in this industry is, right? So there's still a display, there's still a moment of purchase, at least in our touchless system versus the just walk out. But surfacing these opportunities can happen on a phone, right? So think about it. I have access to your cart in the moment of checkout, and I can immediately calculate what's useful to you. If I have access to your loyalty and purchasing history, I can request and say, hey, what's great for this person right now? And you can surface those things right on the screen, a lot more consistent than associates are going to actually get more upsells. So something that we started in the cafeteria industry, and we have ordering tablets as a part of our system. And when we had cafeterias transition from ordering from a person to ordering via a tablet, we actually saw upsells increase by 18%. And we were able, by doing things like, you put fries as an add-on item in the middle of your burger checkout, all right, I'll put it in there, right? So when you add consistency of upsell, you tend to get more upsell, right? You can't necessarily trust that associates are always being like, yes, get this candy bar. It has money off. Whereas if my system talks to Bill's system and Bill says, hey, Toby, this guy loves beef jerky and we've got a deal on beef jerky, tell him to tap this to buy it and grab it on the way out, right? Those are opportunities where we're having this connected and digitized world are going to improve upsell while providing that new convenience.
Mm-hmm. And I might add to that, as much as we do around monitoring and maintenance and management, a lot of my core focus, or most of my core focus, is in digital experience, right? And I think, Toby, you skirted the issue, but it's been key for 25 years. Content is king, and content comes now in 1,000 forms. So if content's coming on a mobile device, or if content's coming in a Fry add-on on a tablet, or if content's coming on a digital menu board, it's still content. And content's going to drive an upsell in a way that is endemic to the process, that doesn't require a human to remember to do an upsell. And if you look at the look at the QSR market, the quick serve restaurant market versus the C-store environment, they're careening towards each other in many respects. QSR market figured out a long time ago, digital, whether it's on a podium with a teeny tiny screen or in a big digital menu board at drive-through, there's value to that one-on-one communication without a human being. And the human being's still there, they're still taking the order, but then they see, oh, I bought a burger, do I want fries with that? Even if it just says it on screen, it's better. And I think that's, the content piece of that sometimes is lost in the process, because that's still what the person's interacting with. It's still what they're seeing, it's still what they're getting, right? And so that and the 18% piece, it's fascinating, but not surprised at all, right? Because they see it, they're not thinking about it, then they see it, and then they do it, right?
Right. And the cool thing is that you get to test more content when you run things digitally, right? So I'm a marketing person. So I come from the world of A/B testing, optimization, all of these pieces. And you can have the same piece of content, but present it in 4 different ways. And now you can figure out what's the most attractive way to run an upsell. And that gives just like so much more opportunity.
Yeah, I heard an interesting distinction between a data-driven organization versus data insights, right? So am I going to drive my business based off, I have a theory, I'm going to go look for the data and then do something, or am I going to go seek the data and then go behave that way? So I think, Toby, what you're saying is yes, I got to go do I'm going to go do my A/B testing, and I'm going to figure out what my data is going to tell me to go do. So it's a little bit of a mix. So that's great insight. So, we kind of hit on a few things: loyalty, convenience store. Just how are they going to manage their customer? How do they make sure that they're getting the experiences they want? This frictionless is feeding into that. There's a lot of different ways to approach that. Does this also help with any of the hiring, or some of the things that convenience stores are looking into? Hiring is a big thing right now. How do these frictionless systems help augment staff versus replace staff? I think that might be a concern of what's on the minds of our audience here. Bill, you want to take that one?
No, thanks. I didn't see any other guys jumping up on. Yeah, but actually, look, especially if you're hiring younger people these days, they are intrigued and interested in working with a lot of different technologies. So I think that could be an attraction, especially retailers that are doing different things in their stores. As some of the frictionless technology removes some of the more mundane tasks, most retailers will say, what I want to do is then shift my human resources to more personal interaction with customers. So there's opportunities there as well. One of the things that I find interesting, and it was on the slide I presented, is, another touch point is mobile POS. A lot of retailers are doing things with mobile POS. It could be a parking lot sale. It could be, a major C-store chain sponsors a NASCAR race and they have a pop-up store. It could be they get a really big spike of business 4th of July weekend and they don't have any space for additional registers or self-checkouts. And so they want to leverage mobile devices. So there's a lot of different possibilities across all these different touch points to personalize, as you were talking about earlier, but also make the store experience not only more exciting and interesting for the customer, but for the associates as well.
Yeah, so I think that's merging the technology. It's not replacing the cashier, but augmenting them, putting them in the high valued activities. Not that checking out a customer or dealing with a customer isn't a high value, but maybe it could be the customer's checking out and they forgot something and that associate runs and gets it for them versus I have to stand behind the counter and check this person out. It's more of I can actually go help the customer on the floor. Are you guys seeing any of that, Toby? I know you've been pretty involved in being, in the store, boots on the ground. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so I mean, like the labor shortage is hurting. First, let's start with like, the play right now is more you bring in technologies like mine today just to be able to handle the sales that you historically had, because the people cannot get the bodies. There's just not enough people. Applications, every new person who talks to me says their like labor applications are down 70%, and with the historical churn of the industry, there's no one saying, oh, this is going to take my job. The people who love our machine the most are actually managers of the stores and the long-term employees of the stores, because where we help is where a lot of that very high churn part-time labor comes in. People who come in and typically will burn out, quit, or leave within a month or two, and they miss shifts, right? It's like the unpredictability of schedules is really what we're normalizing. And we're helping bring in that helping hand. As a result, you're right. When I stand in the store and what I get to see is that, especially in stores that have, they've had the machine in for a month or so, their regulars are trained on it, they can go and do things like there's a lot more cleanliness as a huge part of the COVID era right now, as stores are trying to keep themselves really, really clean. So staff will be able to pop out from behind where they'd normally be locked down at the register. They go out and they'll do like, mopping until they see, somebody who is like chooses not to use the self-checkout. They walk up to the spot and like, all right, and then they come back around, they go handle it. So you're absolutely correct, Bill and Kristen, in terms of what we're doing is we are allowing a greater percentage of typically long-term staff's time to be spent doing the things that add value, whether that's helping somebody who has like a big cart, right? Let's realistically, somebody who brings up 12 items, they want a grocery style service. They want someone to help them bag it. They don't want to deal with it with, even with my self-checkout, it's so much, right? Go help them, right? So there's important customer service moments that are never going to be replaced by these scenarios until you have like perfect just walk out technologies working. In the current phase and probably the next 5 to 10 years, it's really just going to be about augmenting the experience and helping shift what your staff do to things that A, are going to make the store nicer, and B, make them feel better, right? Helping somebody who actually needs help feels good. Making a place like nice and tidy when you have the time to do it feels good. Whereas if I walk into a store that doesn't have any of these technologies yet and they're understaffed, you go up to the shelves and they're a little disheveled, and when people go up to do it, they're rushing and trying to get it on because they know they need to get back. So this is, a lot of this is making lives easier for the long-term staff of the store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that relates. It's interesting if you look at automation technology, right? You look 20 years ago, people in manufacturing automation said, robots are going to take away all of our jobs. What actually happened over decades and decades was better jobs came to pass, and in many cases, more jobs came to pass, right? To service these, to have higher output. It's exactly what we're talking about here. And I think, there were 3 things that I think really came out of all of the comments there, which is higher volume, better transactions, right? And opportunities to have a transaction where you wouldn't otherwise. And so the idea that Bill brought up about, this idea of a forecourt transaction, that was non-existent 10 years ago in the C-store if it wasn't at the pump, right? And Kristen, to your point, at the pump, they still have to go inside to pay, right? so the only way that was going to happen was inside. Now, all of a sudden, we've extended the footprint of the overall C-store into land, into real estate that they own and manage anyhow. So why not try to make that space more valuable from a dollars and cents perspective? The technology evolution combined with the savviness of the employee that you have there. And Toby, I think the idea of the long-term employees like it the most because they're the ones who also know how to do the job the best, potentially, right? If they're not somebody who's walked in yesterday and who's been there a month and who's probably not going to be there 3 months from then, right, in a transitional period. And those are also the employees that are hard. It's hard to find the value to the organization other than to fulfill those menial tasks. And so I think that's a key to that. And I think when you start to look at that infrastructure, then you start to get into the conversation of the value of the initial investment. The value of the investment you're going to make today is going to show up in the total cost of ownership over 3 years. And people who look for ROI, that's where the ROI is going to play out. Because yeah, it's not cheap to do a digital transformation. If anybody says that it is, they probably are doing it wrong, right? But when you do it and you do it right, all of a sudden it transforms your business for 365 days later, and then you start to see that value proposition, and it's a totally different environment.
Yeah, and on top of that, the C-store space is very complex. I mean, I know that I said it took 15 to 20 years for pay at the pump, but honestly, today, we are seeing technology take off a lot faster in C-store space, and bringing in the complexities. One of the things, there's a question in here about age. A lot of the products that C-stores sell is age restricted. What are you guys seeing? That's another point of friction, right? I got to stop, I got to ID somebody. There's risks to both, right? I have to have my ID, and then the cashier has to make sure that that person is old enough. Are you seeing any technologies that enable that to be a little less friction?
There's plenty of technologies. The problem is state legislatures.
Yeah.
Conexxus and Next. Come on, that's where we're.
Yeah.
Softball, yeah. I mean.
Oh, go ahead, Toby. Go ahead.
I was going to say something that we've been working with the Conexxus team on is making sure that we're ready for true age transition, and that one of the huge values that Conexxus and NACS bring us are, as Bill said, those connections to legislature, state, and federal. I think that there is huge opportunity. I really like the way that they designed the system in terms of verifying identity digitally while being privacy sparing. And I do think that that's a future. It's probably not a next year future, but it's soon-ish future. It'll be state by state basis. States that are more freedom are going to be the first to bring it in. But I think for a lot of age-gated products, especially like beers that are already in the coolers today, that's going to be something that will be a self-service option in the next couple of years. And there's a number of technologies approaching us, right? So even if True Age, right, is working on their way, there's also Apple recently, right, has been accepted or will be accepted at airports for official IDs, and that's already biometrically driven. It's biometrically driven on your own device. So you are the one who keeps your biometrics. All right. So you do your face. You can lock it out after, say, 30 seconds, and that, I think, will be able to get past state legislatures in terms of, okay, this is an acceptable window in which the person must be present, that you can't steal mom's credit card, right? You can go and do those things.
It's interesting. I think we're finally seeing where loyalty and technology are no longer only valuable for loyalty, because loyalty creates an opportunity to gain information about that customer. The customer is willing to give it up, and the value proposition is loyalty in return, right? Something from the brand. In age,
I heard a really interesting statistic on that. 86% of customers are willing to give up their information for something.
There you go.
86%. That was it. I was like flabbergasted when I heard that number.
But here's how that translates. The way that translates into this conversation is they are also willing to give up personal information in that loyalty experience that eases the age-restricted transaction. So when I walk in, if I've taken the time to set up my loyalty program profile correctly, and I've given you a picture and I've given you age information and it's been verified, right? And then I'm securely logged in, all of a sudden I may have a path to age verification, to Toby's point, and we're seeing that mishmash. And actually what's interesting is right now there's a video analytics program that was implemented at I think it's Cleveland Browns Stadium. It is a ticketless environment if you filled out your profile. So you go in, you take a picture of yourself, you buy a ticket, you get it all there, you just walk through the gate, and they're scanning like 500 people at a time, and they're picking people out. And if you didn't do that, your phone beeps, they pull you aside and off you go. But they are streaming people through the gate basically through visual verification. I think that's the start of this process. But it's a good example. And age restricted buys is key, I think, especially for C-stores, right? But it also is talk about frictionless. It's a major piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, so that's the great thing about this conversation. There's so many, it's like really breaking down where the friction happens, right? It's all these little different nuances of where friction can happen. And we have about 8 minutes left, and I want to hit on technology. It's hard, and there's a lot to it, right? And Ivy, I think you did some really great introductions to, how do you keep it running? What's day 1 versus day 100 or day 1000? And the technology gets better and better and better, but there's a partnership that has to be built there. Can talk a little bit about, what does that evolution look like? Because it shouldn't be revolution, it should be evolution.
Yeah, what's the right way to put it? Technology changes faster than we can keep up with. That's something I think we all know. What I think is very key, though, is don't be scared of that in a transformation. And it's okay to do a small piece and then try another piece and then try another piece. But in doing that, every time you do it, create an architecture that's always a baseline for you. And partnerships come through time, right? And partnerships come through deployment of quality technology in an environment that's stable, that's ready to go. Don't just run into a technology implementation. And this is some of the folks that know me well know that I sit somewhere between I love trade shows and I hate trade shows. And the reason is I love trade shows because, whoa, there's a lot of cool toys. And I hate trade shows because, whoa, there's a lot of cool toys, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff at trade shows where people come back and then you talk to someone and they go, I want to implement that. You go, oh, okay, but it's like 7 months to get it implemented, right? And they go, no, I want it tomorrow. You go, okay, we can do it tomorrow. And then we implement it and they go, oh, I hate that thing. I know, but you tried to implement it tomorrow, not 7 months from now, right? So it's these transformations are a process to understand your customer, to understand your business outcome. What are you trying to get from it, right? And that's why Toby and Bill's technologies are so viable, because they have outcomes. You don't have to think about the outcome. You have to think about, does it apply to my business and how? And if you forget the business outcome, you're stuck. But then the other piece is, don't forget all the other pieces that go with it. And it goes back to the content is king conversation. If you're going to go hang a screen on the wall, talk about content. Talk about it every day, every day, every day. but also if you're going to go put something on the network, know what your cybersecurity plan is. Know what your plan is for network. If you're going to put 500 devices on the same network, know what your impact is on your bandwidth. And C-stores are a great example. We have C-store customers who, when they started with us, were putting in 24-port switches. They are now putting in 4 24-port switches, right? So there's a lot of devices that are sitting on those networks, and they're sitting on wireless networks, and they're eating up bandwidth, and they're eating up IP addresses, and they're communicating inside and outside their organization. To pay attention to that, because when you don't, the result of that is either a bad customer experience. At best, it's a pain for your IT department. At worst, it's a bad customer experience. And the worst part of a bad customer experience is probably the loss of that customer. And getting to day 1,000 means that you're getting in the customer realm. Bill said it at the very beginning of his slides. He said, Bill said, it's all about you. It's all about the customer. That's key. If you're not focused on the end customer result, you're probably putting in the wrong technology.
Yeah, so we have about 3 minutes, and I want to hit on one last final point. So a lot of folks might think that, we've got Mastin, we've got GK, Sagent, you kind of bring it all together, but it might appear that Mastin and GK are competitors, but you guys are cooperating to build something that's amazing. Can you guys kind of talk together about that partnership, right? That you hit on it, Toby. It's connecting systems, connecting information, and that's what the power is. I'm going to start with you, Bill, and then Toby, I'll let you take the second.
Well, I just think it is, there's some overlap in some areas, but I mean, what they do is something, we don't do anything exactly like that, number one. And number two, in today's technology world, today's partner is tomorrow's competitor and vice versa. I mean, there's a number of other companies in our space that we compete with, especially the bigger companies that do software and hardware both in our space. And so we run on their hardware every day, okay? So it's just reality. That's business today. Mm-hmm. You have to be open. You got to have that flexibility. And GK's approach is we're trying to be more of that common platform, common services, so that retailer has that flexibility to add touch points and ways of shopping for customers, whether it's ours out of the box solution or whether it's a partner like Mastin. And we really think the same thing is going to happen in the frictionless space as has happened in POS hardware, and that an open approach is a better approach, because it's not like there's going to be one company that is going to be the winner in that space. There's going to be multiple companies, and I could work with one retailer today that wants company X and then a company tomorrow that wants company B. So yeah, that's our world today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I totally agree, Bill. And like, I guess the question is, why is Salesforce such a successful company? Right? It's connectivity. It's talking to everything and making it an opportunity for everyone to build their own best of breed practice. So yeah, Bill and I both can report sales to you, but we have very different talents in our technologies, right? We are very, very singularly focused on making amazing computer vision technology that will get your lines a lot shorter, right? Get people in and out, recognize everything in the building. Like, that is where our focus lives. And so that means that we still work extremely well, and we have these other opportunities when connecting to technologies like Bill's through services like Ivy's. That's how you get that better integrated store where you've got a lot of people that are great in different ways. So things that Bill's going to do in the cloud and business intelligence and helping you identify what stores should stock new items, right? Those are things that provide real value, and he doesn't need a terminal to do that. I can be the terminal and make it move quickly. So there's different talent pools that you're going to draw on. And yes, everyone's a friend in one context and a competitor in another, but it doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It just means that we're always trying to provide the most value to the end client. And sometimes that's going to be a little friction, to hit the topic for us, but we're okay with that.
That's awesome. That was perfect. It's actually time. Well, I did promise a little bit of, excitement in our conversation. I really appreciate everyone here today. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to Conexxus for letting us have these great IoT conversations. And I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.